I'm Sumi from UK.
Hi.
Hello from Colombia.
Hi.
Ciao from Brussels.
Hi. Hi, Francesca. Look at you in the. I see your books behind you.
Actually, yeah, my children books.
Hi from Torino too. Ciao, David.
Oh, ciao. Keure.
Hi.
Hi. Thanks for staying up.
Good to see you. Good to see all of you.
I know.
Ciao. No.
Devi mettere qua.
Okay, okay. I think people are assembling. I am really happy to say hello to familiar faces and not so familiar faces. And I am going to record this. And one of the ideas for
It's not working.
a
Oops. Sorry.
for a
It did work.
tour for this situation, part of my background with the book fair has been working with programs, but also in the shifting context of the fair over a decade, like 13 or 14 years, in New York, in LA, and other places. And obviously this one is different because we're so far afield from each other. And it's difficult, right, in some ways, but in other ways, people are connecting via the program across geographical spaces. Vendors who can't go to things usually are able to go to the program as well. So there's weird differences about what we're doing now. Obviously not in a physical space, but my first engagement with the book fair was through A.A. Bronson invited me to do the classroom program in 2009, 2008. The first year it was at PS1. So there was always a way through the program to allow people to perform their books in some way. And I've always thought about the program at the book fair as that, as people in sort of the physical space of the classroom performing new books. And having been through a decade or so of over 400 talks and performances and screenings, I am consistently inspired, in awe of the energy, the creativity that bubbles out of the fair. And this year it happened in the same way, where in the midst of a program, you just feel really grateful, especially in this context, to be able to gather and hear from people. And I think the beginning of the program this year was with Dainita Singh, and the personality that came through her talk, sort of the affirming of her process and the ability to translate her process into an energy into the Zoom gave me such a light heart, and it was such a way to start. And I just want to call out Offset Projects as like the first stop on the tour. I'm not going to share my screen in terms of going through the website, but I would just emphasize one of the things that Dainita said over and over again during that first talk in the classroom was how special it was that Offset could present in an Indian publisher, could present at the book fair this year, just because of this like shifting context, because we could do it online, because otherwise there wasn't the resources or like the ability to do it at other points. So just in that on Thursday morning, the first event where Dianita Singh was talking about her books and her process, you had this affirmation about what we were doing here as organizers of the book fair. And before I go any further, just calling out the work of the fair team, Sonel Breslev, Sunny Iyer, Emmy Cathedral, and all the other printed matter people, Max Schumann, who thought this through, and all the designers of the website and all that kind of stuff. I think if you have a moment, go to the first recommendation is offset projects. The second one I would really call out, if you go back to the program or are interested in the work by Paper Monument, which was best letters from Asian Americans in the arts. That program that happened on Thursday evening was readings of letters that Asian American artists and designers and writers were writing to their community or writing to themselves about their position in the art community as Asian Americans, and it was a really moving and disparate group of people that were able to contribute. And that was one that will stick with me for a while. So that is a very new publication by Paper Monument. They're always doing interesting, smart, sort of that type of publisher that straddles the line between an academic topic, but doing it in a way that you couldn't do in academic publishing. And I think that's a category here at the book fair that I like to support through the program, because it's unique work and it's something that we need in terms of like creating new kinds of narratives and amplifying voices that otherwise haven't been amplified in art historical or design discourses. I think similarly, a conversation after 8 books had with Amy Silman and Rendon Johnson yesterday will stick with me. And this was a talk about Amy Silman's book Faux Pas. After 8 is a wonderful little bookshop in Paris and also a publisher. So I think this is another category we have where we have people that have physical sites, like a little bookstore After 8 has in Paris, but also producing their own books. So they have sort of in the fair context, they're promoting the books that they're making, but also sort of mirroring the physical context of their bookshop. And that was one that I will remember. I think one of the plans that I had for this tour was to also, I spent 14 years of my professional career in New York, but the last 3 years I've been in San Francisco at the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art. And the publishers that I've encountered in my current context in the Bay Area are sort of part of my new setting in California, but also the collaborations that we can do in a local context have been hugely inspiring to me, and something that I think about now all the time as part of professionally what I'm able to do. And I asked David Kasperzak and Luca Antonucci, who are the publishers of Culpa Press, to join us, just to say hi and to participate in this conversation for a second, because rather than going virtually through the fair through websites, I thought it would be good to just have one group where I'm like talking to people about their projects. And with David and Luca, one of the things that I wanted to highlight is their work, their newest publication, by Barbara Stoffker Solomon. I'm sure they'll talk about a few other things, but I think in terms of new publications, this might be the work by the oldest author at the fair. I think Barbara Stoffker Solomon, who's an eminent American designer and thinker of design, is 95, 96 maybe. And they have a new book out with her called Ditto. And I was going to share my screen with Ditto on the screen. And is David and Luca here? David, Luca.
We're here. Hi.
Hi. Good to see you.
Sorry, I was on mute.
That's
Hi,
good.
how's it going?
Good, good. I didn't know this book was happening. I've been bad at keeping up, I guess.
No,
But-
no. Well, we've been wanting to work with Bob.
Which
Oh,
check?
sorry.
Hey, it's Sanel. Hey, guys.
Hey, how's it going?
For 1 second, I can't see anything on my end. Do other people, are they able
Oh.
to see?
Sharing. It says I'm sharing my
Now,
screen.
got it. Okay, now I see your screen.
Can see.
Okay. Maybe my connection. Sorry to interrupt. I'm gonna mute.
Oh, no, it's fine.
Was this something that popped up in the last few months, or was it just
Yeah,
something-
well, so we've been wanting to work with Bobby for a while. She was publishing some books with Owl Cave, which is another local
yeah,
bookseller and publisher, and they kind of stopped working with her for the time being.
Yeah.
And so when we had a friend who became her assistant, Chris Grunder, and so he reached out to us, and she was like, Bobby really wants to put out this book. And we kind of jumped at it. We were so excited to work with her. And she just like briefly to explain like the sort of formal content of it, like she prints out grids and cuts and pastes all of her work onto them, and then she puts them into these sort of like binders. And so her practice is really like already bookmaking. And so for us, we just like wanted some of that to carry through, which is why it's like coil bound and comes in this case, because it's sort of like us sort of mimicking the binder aspect of her collage work.
Yeah. I mean, her work is, I'm really drawn to her work, and I feel like she's drawn to this community too. Like she's like kind of discovering it, like as an older person being sort of thrilled by it. So it's really cool, this connection between sort of an older legacy of design in the Bay Area and connecting with it. She designed a bunch of really beautiful calendars for SF MoMA.
Hello and welcome. My name is Jacqueline Dooner. I'm the founding director of
I think we're
Gallery.
at somebody else's
We
Zoom.
are an artist-run gallery and bookshop.
So now, do you know what's happening?
Through a deep collaborative
I'm not sure.
relationship.
I'm muted, so I don't think it's me.
Oh, okay, maybe it's me. It was me. I had another program open.
Okay.
She made some beautiful calendars for SF MoMA in the early 50s. That I, in terms of the archive at the museum, are some of the most special like design objects. So like this breadth of like chronology and like the fact that she's still making work is pretty thrilling.
Yeah, I mean, it's also something that we're particularly interested in, is like working with artists that maybe it's not like what they're exactly known for.
Yeah.
So a lot of our books, like, we try to sort of appeal to people's like side practices, even though it's not like, it's still her primary art practice, but it's like whatever they're excited about and whatever they want to make, instead of like what people know them for, maybe.
Yeah. And like within the process of this book, was it was it something that she was eager to hear about your interest in the like physical object of it, or was it something that she was like dictating to you about process?
No, like actually, like I thought she would be so much more like specific about, you know, like what she wanted it to look like, but she was actually really open to all of our ideas about like how to best represent it. And she like self-publishes her own books too.
Yeah.
And she does those kind of like perfect bound, digitally printed. And so she wanted it to look different from those, you know?
Yeah. Do you think it's right to claim that this is the book at the fair by the oldest author?
I don't know, David, have you found any older?
Still living? Yeah, that's probably.
That's what I mean. It's still flourishing.
Lawrence Ferlinghetti last week. He would have been the oldest, but yeah, I think it's pretty safe to say. She might resent that, but
I don't think so.
Or maybe take pride in that. It is incredible that she's still working at her age and working with such like excitement.
Yeah.
Like you don't feel like you're bothering her.
No.
Like sometimes projects we've done or I've done with older artists, especially if it's related to something more historical that they've done, you sometimes get this sense it's like, okay, kid, like I'm gonna give you this.
Yeah.
And with her, it's, I mean, she's as excited and proactive about it as we are.
Yeah, when I worked with David and Luca on a show at SF MoMA called Printed Publics, where they did a huge mural in the education center at SF MoMA, as well as sort of the well, I guess for lack of a better word, the identity of the show in terms of like designing some of the wall space and stuff like that. But as part of that show, I worked with Barbara to make an installation, and instead of showing her books, she wanted me to make a pile of her books, and like aesthetically, she was most thrilled to sort of think about a pile of books as like this sculptural like entity that was its own beast. And it was mostly coming from her like doing self-publishing for the first time, where she at her home had piles of books, and she was just captivated by the structure of it for some like personally, and she wanted to duplicate that in like a gallery setting for our work. And she was so thrilled, like honestly thrilled by having a pile on like an orange plinth that sort of mirrored this kind of red orange in her like palette.
Yeah.
And it was
yeah,
like,
I mean, if you guys are like sort of on that note, like there's a video at the bottom of the page that's her like walking through the book, and you can kind of see like how she thinks about the work that she makes. It's very like it's somewhere between object and design. Like it's a really interesting way of like looking at it. If you guys want to watch it later, I think it's like a minute and a half.
Yeah. No, I didn't know that. That's great. Do you want to shout out the Future Farmers thing too?
Oh yeah. Well, I'll let David talk about that, because that was a really intensive design process for him. And
yeah, the Future Farmers, Amy Franceschini and Michael Swain, amongst probably 100 other collaborators throughout their practice, they reached out to us about kind of taking on an orphaned project that was meant to be a catalog from their retrospective at the Yerba Buena Center for the Arts, that just for many reasons never got done. And it was fun for us to take on, because Luca and I it's not often that we will do a catalog of something that has already taken place. We prefer to work with artists to concept and develop the book from start to finish. But with them, like, it's their whole practice and everything they do is such a like heavy collaborative process that we were sort of able to turn what would be kind of a straightforward catalog into a sort of strange design process for us. So the book, reflecting parts of their show, was broken up into these 4 navigation categories based on the cardinal directions. And then their work was sort of thematically slotted into each one of those directions. And so I really wanted to do the same thing with the book. So the book is in 4 sections, and the layout of the page actually changes from north to east to south to west. So the orientation that you're reading the book, sort of, you have to turn it 360 degrees as you advance through the book. And it even continues to the cover, like the final degrees are on the front and back cover, which was quite an interesting layout experience.
You just have to turn your like monitor around.
I was literally turning my monitor around. And then when you go to print things out and look at the pagination and the order of pages, it quickly became apparent that what read well doing that on the screen was in fact backwards when printed out. So it was a lot of going back and forth and trial and error between printing and then returning to the design file. And yeah, they are, both Amy and Michael were very involved in the process, and made some suggestions that we wouldn't necessarily think of or try out that turned out really cool. The book is printed on 4 different paper stocks, 1 for each section. And they actually sort of a gradient from like a bright white to a blue to a gray. And surprisingly, we thought we would have a lot of sort of image loss on printing on some of these darker and colored papers. But it came out really nice and kind of tinted everything in a really interesting and still very legible way.
One of the other aspects of David and Luca's practice is organizing the San Francisco Art Book Fair as well. And I was just curious, like from your guys' perspective as being a vendor in the context of the virtual book fair and having such a extensive background of working with fairs, like how's it feel? Like what is something like in terms of like also planning a fair, like what do you miss? What's like your, from the vantage point now on Sunday of the virtual book fair?
Yeah, I mean, we were like sort of talking about this between us two, like, and I just think it's so great, but it's also like bittersweet, right? Like, because like I really enjoyed this fair, like even like way more than I thought I would, and like and just like the like I like just truthfully and but at the same time, like it also made me miss people like so much. Like I forgot how much I missed all of the vendors and like and just being in New York and being in LA and participating in the fair. And so it's the same for us in San Francisco. Like even though we like a lot of the vendors here are from San Francisco, like a lot of people travel here and it's our chance to get to see them, you know, that once or twice a year. And but it's also like when we get to see, you know, everyone's like so kind of in their own routines that it's when we get to see people that live in the Bay Area. It's like it became this like important as a social gathering in addition to just, you know, not having to do with books at all. Like it's just like this event where everyone hangs out. And so we really missed that part. But we're also like, yeah, that's it.
Yeah, same here. And I definitely want to give props to Sanel and the rest of Printed Matter crew. Like this was by far the best virtual experience I've had during the pandemic in terms of any event. And Luke and I participated in other virtual art book fairs, and you get this sort of sense where you can kind of just leave it alone. Like it starts and you just kind of out of your mind until it's over and you fill some orders or whatever. But this somehow felt very true to the nature of the physical fair, and that like we've been thinking about it and discussing it and been present for it like all week, like as if we were at the actual fair. And I think a lot of it is due to you as well, David, and having some really great programming. And other friends of ours we've sorry.
Can I chime in?
Yeah.
I just wanted to quickly also just mention that Luke and I had some conversations early on in, I want to say it was in April of last year even. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. I have a poor connection where I am. And yeah, I really, I mean, everything you've just said is really wonderful to hear in many ways. And I have the same feeling of not wanting this to end. Not maybe even being prepared for it to end, even though we've been working on it for so long and like we're honestly very tired. But I think that I said it earlier, maybe like we had like a small toast, but there's been a lot of generosity on behalf of people like Luca and David who organize events like this, and other publishers who have participated over the last year with sharing their experiences, you know, good and bad, that's helped develop this production. So I just want to note that, because it's been through those conversations that this event has become what it is.
Yeah, and like I think in this process, like there was a sense that you would know how to do it after you did it, like in terms of like having the vantage point of trying something out or a design idea. But I think as you worked with the designers to set up the site and that kind of thing, it became clear that there was agency by the publishers to create their own setting in a way that mirrors the experience of the fair, where everybody does their thing, like their aesthetic comes through in some way, especially with like people that have been doing it for a while. They have like their booth game down, and I felt that in terms of the pages and going around, and I think that's an element of design that was an open-ended question, I guess, going in, but it seems like at this point, I would say it's a success in terms of being able to get a sense of the individuals that are, like the template allows for singularity to come through, which is part of the spirit of the fair for sure. And like, I don't know the complexity of the back end, but it does seem on the front end totally clear that that's happening. And
the chat has been really cool too, I think, in ways that you weren't necessarily intending. Like,
yeah,
from publisher to publisher, it's been lots of funny inside jokes and just like, hey, can I get you a coffee? Or like, I'm running to the bathroom, you need water. Like, things we would normally ask each other in the throes of sitting at the table for 12 hours straight, like have come through in the chats too. And it feels nice just to have this
just doing,
sort of mundane
Vivian said just doing my first round.
Yeah, I mean, that's like a really neat aspect of like humor in general, is sort of like recognizing these aspects that are part of behaviors, and then when you're like out of that context, how to like still sort of play at those like habits and stuff.
Yeah, and you do enough of these fairs, you kind of wind up if not directly next to, in a similar zone as a lot of the same people over and over. So you kind of become this like traveling book family.
Yeah.
And you still kind of got that sense through the chat. It was like, there's vacancy. Like they're always, we're looking at them across the aisle always. So we're chatting to them like we were still doing that. And they chat us often versus publishers who would like run by once during the fair and say hi. We'll do the same on the chat, and just like, hey, nice to see you, and that's all you're going to hear from them.
Yeah.
But people sort of behave just like they do at the fair on the chat. It's really funny.
Deep lurking.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think like just to shout out, like in terms of Bay Area folks, like I think what I'm like interested in my current context is like how to connect with a local community, as well as like being very present to a broader global context to this field. But I think what I've learned in the past 2 or 3 years in regards to like what's happening in the Bay Area is something that even in the context of this fair, like you have new buddies and new networks that are based on regional stuff, but you're in this more international context. And so I thanks David and Luca for dropping in.
Oh yeah, of course.
conversation.
We're super happy to talk about books, especially in the Bay Area.
And I think in terms of like just leaving some parting thoughts about like what a virtual tour would be for me, like I think the way I curate the program, if you follow along with the publishers involved, those would be ones that I would want people to like look through, to check out again, to spend some time with again. I haven't spent a lot of time talking about like the rare and antiquarian section, but in terms of my background as like a librarian and an archivist dealing with the historical breadth of artist publishing in the 20th and 21st centuries, those people are also like a core of this this movable feast in person and in virtual spheres, in physical spheres. They bring sort of like an intellectual and historical weight to the fair in terms of the quality of materials that I think really benefits the fair. And I think like the physical nature of the historical things maybe suffers the most in terms of the virtual format. If I don't know what the dealer's experience is, but I would say I miss those guys the most in terms of like the physical fair, the antiquarian dealers and the people that have the rare books, because there is something about the aura or the presence of those things. Even if you can't afford them, you can still like experience them in the booths in a different way. And I think just the last thing I'll point out in the virtual fair or as a tour is just the work that we have tried to do. Like today is the whole program is, and this was Sanel's idea of having the whole program be the like friendly fire section, performing the program based on that section, which is usually a hallway or a gallery filled with publishers that are dealing with activism at various levels, dealing with racial justice, dealing with critiques of economic asymmetries and social justice, and I think giving them a space in the program was one of the other moves this year that is really highlighting what we want to amplify as a fair and as a community. I think in my program, I try to do similar things in terms of who gets to speak and why. But I would say that, like, that Friendly Fire program is another addition this year that I think should continue in some way. And that kind of community building that's happening through publishing and has been a history related to print and matter since its founding, being socially and politically engaged at some level, is a big thread. The and I'll leave it there. But Cassandra Press is a press that I would call out in specifically, that Candace Williams has been doing for a while with other collaborators, is something that she's had various events at the classroom as well, and nothing but impressed, and a program that there's similar ones popping up throughout our community, but something in between, like a pedagogical space and an aesthetic space and a space of activism and a space of creativity and beauty. So I guess I'll leave it there for a tour.
Hey, David.
now-
Yeah,
yeah.
can I just follow up on something that you just mentioned regarding the rare and OP section?
Yeah.
I think that there was, sorry, I'm gonna ask again. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, yeah.
I can't see anything on my end.
Yeah.
It's really good to hear a little bit about like what is missed maybe from like the visitor experience with the rare and OP section of the fair. I do want to kind of acknowledge how many of those booksellers have really like taken on this challenge in a really amazing way. I dropped in the link that goes directly to them, and I think that you'll see some really impressive and like project-based presentations that are surprising. And I love that section too. And that's like a section that I especially like miss, like the smells.
Yeah.
If that like I think it makes some sense. But there's some really interesting stuff in there that you may not even like. Sometimes that, you know, there's also like maybe a barrier of like feeling like maybe you don't know how to even start with some of that material. And I feel like there's like some really great presentations that like are very accessible and interesting and like immediately kind of give you the I don't know, like a good sense that you just like want to dive in. So and we have heard that people are doing okay as well in terms of sales. So that's encouraging.
That's cool. I wasn't gonna go there, but like, that's great to hear.
Anyway, I wanted to just
no, I just again, like the message about the Friendly Fire section and that kind of programming and putting that at the forefront is, I know that's an important part of your agenda, and I think it really comes through in how it's presented on the website and just through who's at the fair and that kind of thing.
Thank you for saying that. It's, you know, we're definitely trying to prioritize, like representation of certain exhibitors that feel, you know, that are kind of saying something that feels very urgent right now. I will say that in terms of like producing that section of Friendly Fire, Emmy led it, you know, entirely. It was a spark of an idea that I had, and she made it happen. So so I have to give her full credit for this. But we're thrilled, you know, like that it worked out, and it's an amazing day. Today is like full of programs on that page and brought by these exhibitors, and I would love to continue it. So I'm glad that you also feel really strongly about it.
Yeah, I missed the first one, the Chimurenga one, but Chimurenga is a newspaper publishing platform. I think they're based in South Africa for a while, but addressing culture and art in Africa in a way that is really, really important for the last decade or so, or longer. And to see them kicking off the friendly fire section was thrilling. And I think, and it comes back to another aspect of this fair where I said I missed it, but I don't have that complete FOMO because I know we've been recording things. And personally, it's been a huge gap in my role, is like not thinking through archiving programs in the past. And there's been a ton of things that I would like to be able to revisit from the past that's happened at the book fairs. But this year, with the sort of context of the Zoom calls and stuff like that, we will have a better ability to archive this stuff and to revisit, which I think will become a really interesting resource that is like this other element of this context that is, for me, will have legs that other fairs haven't in the same way, just because of the quality of the content that will be able to be revisited by people on the webs.
Yeah, everything is already available from yesterday, as well as from Friday and from Thursday. So we've been, I think some of us have had multiple devices open, listening to tunes from the stage while diving into the fair. And this was not meant to be a conversation between you and me, David.
Oh no, that's fun. People don't want to listen to me just talk to myself. But I think we should wrap it there. And I really appreciate people registering for this. And maybe if people have, should we do some questions, or is it?
I'm looking to see, it seems like there's been generally some just kind of information shared.
Yeah.
There was someone, Sumi Pereira, I think wanted to be unmuted for a moment to ask something.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't know if they can unmute themselves though.
I've unmuted myself. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, great. Just to say a quick thank you. I'm from the UK, and we are showing at the fair under A.M. Bruno. And to say we've all filmed ourselves handling our books and uploaded videos on our stand as well. And it's just such a privilege and honor to be showing there whilst we are still in our living rooms in our pajamas. The time difference. And it's glorious that you have all the time in the world to look through everyone's books, whereas if we were physically there, I don't know whether I would have looked at so many books as I have looked through the virtual experience. Thank you so much. So bless you all for that.
It's really sweet. Thank you.
Yeah, I see Barbara Schroeder in the audience. Hi, Barbara. Barbara's of Dancing Foxes. They had a wonderful program in the beginning of the day on Friday. And I just ordered their Lorraine O'Grady publication, where they're working with Brooklyn Museum on their catalog. And do not miss that. Speaking of FOMO, I want to see the Lorraine O'Grady show at the Brooklyn Museum. And I hope I get to see it. Vivian Sming is on the line too. Vivian gets the prize of the most active publisher in the program. She was part of the classroom CABC across various platforms here, and shouts to her for being so game to participate. And her project she's a person in the Bay Area that I'm completely impressed with in terms of her projects and the work that she's doing. So hi, Vivian. All right, I think any questions? Yeah,
there's some thank yous. And
Hi, Sunny.
Bay Area folks really appreciate all these shout outs.
That's funny.
And
Sunny was such a wonderful part of the book fair experience this year for me in terms of this just being so constant in the email chain and thread. So I know she's, in terms of the team, such an important part.
Absolutely. She is, yes. Well, I guess we'll wrap it up, David. Thank you so much for offering to do this. I think I asked you pretty short notice. A lot of this programming, this kind of more spontaneous programming, was asks just a couple days before the fair was going to open, and it's worked out so well, I think. And yeah, thank you. It's been such a pleasure working with you on this.
Yeah, and like we said, the program for the classroom and other programs will be viewable if you missed it. So that's another, just, I'm so happy that is a possibility. And if you're curious about sort of things that I'm tracking and following, that's a great lens, is just to follow along with that program and the projects that I'm inspired by. I'm inspired by things beyond the breadth of the program, but in terms of what I could point you to, that's a great example. So thank you so much. Oh yeah, shots the dice function is everyone's favorite. I think I really like that too. The designer Rito gets a shout out here. So
there's people dice,
and so many people that I talk to bring up the dice.
That's so great. We love it. There's also the book cloud, in case people are aren't familiar with that yet, which is similar to the dice, but it's books specific to books rather than exhibitors. And that is that lives in the arcade. So check out the arcade, sign our guest book. We've got a couple more hours of this fair, a little bit more than a couple more hours, especially for people in California. So we're enjoy your experience, enjoy the stay.
Thanks, Luca and David, especially. Bye.
Bye.